What is soil? And is it just dirt? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about exploring nature right outside your front door. You know, every footstep we have as we're crunching on the ground, we have this rich, earthy, crumbly stuff right underneath us. It is something you probably don't even think of very often. You step over it, you plant things in it, you sweep it off your shoes, you brush it out your front door. But if I were to tell you that the ground beneath you, the real soil, is one of the most extraordinary living systems on Earth, I hope you would believe me. We're going to dig into this, literally, and you're going to see the difference between soil and dirt, what exactly is soil, and explore this hidden layer right underneath our feet. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about nature right outside your front door. You know, soil has all sorts of things in it. We are going to find out about microbes, worms, fungi, and even a little bit of chemistry that makes the earth breathe. Oh, boy. So the first question I'm going to answer, is soil dirt? You know, my funny thing is my friend works as a soil engineer, and people will come to him and say, well, I need you to test my dirt. And it's not dirt. It's soil. He tests soil. He's a soil tester, and soil is alive. Dirt is the miscellaneous dust and debris that goes around inside of our house. Soil is a community, a mixture of minerals, organic matter, air, water, chemicals, life, all woven together inside this area. It's something that benefits us. It's the heartbeat, really, of what's going on around us in the yard, in our backyard, and the forest, everything that you look at. And it also allows us to drain water and to, restore life every time we have a season, right? We're coming into fall, the leaves are falling, and the trees and the flowers in my backyard are coming to an end. But this soil is going to make it thrive once again. Think about it this way, that the soil is a thriving city, while dirt is a ghost town. There's not much living in dirt, and if it is, it's probably not very good. So we all have this builder aspect to us when we're looking at the soil around us. We're caretakers of all of this. It's funny, when you think about tracking mud into your house, you might think, ugh, I can't believe I got mud in the house for the millionth time. And, we clean it out, we sweep it out, we wash and mop our floors to keep it away from the house. But you know what? Like I said, it is highways built by worms, construction cranes of fungal inside, trillions of microscopic workers exchanging messages through chemical whispers inside of the ground. So soil isn't just stuff. It is a whole structure about what goes on inside. So imagine if you're holding in your hand, a handful of healthy soil. And it might look simple, brown. It might make your hand dirty. And it is mostly solid matter. Some of it's space, room for air and water to go within it. And it's mainly made up of four things. First of all, minerals, rock fragments. Think of sand, gritty, which helps water drain away. Silt, which is smooth and soft. Clay, which is maybe a little stickier, and it's pretty great at holding nutrients and also holding in water. There's organic material in it, decomposing leaves, roots, critters, worms, other life matter, all decaying inside of this particular soil. There is a whole pantry of things going on in the soil world, and there's going to be water. There's microscopic pores between the particles that carries nutrients through this water system whenever you have some soil in your hand. And there's air in there, oxygen, carbon dioxide. It allows for breathing roots, microorganisms, to breathe beneath the ground layer. And if you put soil and water in a clear jar and you shake it and you separate it out, you're going to see the sand sink first, then the silt, and then finally the clay particles. Floating on top will be probably tiny flecks of life, bits of carbon, remains of things that were once living, and that's the ingredient. But there's also like a architecture to it as well. The layers of the soil have various horizons. Think about the O horizon as the organic layer. That's going to be the leaf litter, mulch, decomposing matter, probably coming from our backyard and our gardens, everything else like that. Then we have the A horizon. That's going to be the topsoil. It's dark, it's rich, and it is alive. The B horizon is going to be minerals, clay, sort of a geologic river of materials. And then the C horizon, weathered rock, raw material for the future soil that we're going to get someday. This earthy smell that you get also from the soil, usually you can smell it after a good rain, is called petrichor. And it comes from the bacteria, the streptomycin, that is in the soil itself. And it releases molecules called geosmins, which is literally the earth smells. And humans are sensitive to it. We can detect that smell when we walk out in the rain and we walk outside in our yard after a fresh rain. And someone said that it is so sensitive, we can detect a single drop of it in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. We can recognize the scent of life renewing itself. It's kind of funny. The other day was Halloween, and someone said, it smells funny, outside in the yard. And so I went outside because I'm like, what does it smell funny? Is there a skunk out there or something? And I smelled, and it was that smell because we just had a rain. There's a lot of leaf material out there because, again, I believe in a messy forest, right? A messy yard that has decaying leaves and everything else like that. And that's what it was. It was decaying leaves. And I wondered if the kids had been out in a forest ever. Did they ever smell what nature smells like with decomposing leaves and decomposing flowers? And that's the idea. You're smelling the breath of the soil itself. Under the soil itself is an underground city. So if you, like I said, take a handful of soil and you imagine inside there are more living organisms than probably people on Earth. So let's talk about a few of these residents that live in this hidden world. First of all, there's microbes. That's the invisible majority. We're talking about bacteria. They recycle, they break down organic material, they free nutrients from the plant material and release it so that the future plant material will have something to use and grow and basically grow the plant. Some of it is fixed nitrogen straight from the air, and it turns from an unstable gas into the fuel plants need to grow. Without them, no plants could survive very long. There's also fungi in there, and so these are the architects of connections. They create these fine threads, hyphae, and it spreads for miles in a teaspoon of soil. They reach out and they grow. And it forms these partnerships with plant roots called mycorrhizae. And it's an underground internet. They ferry nutrients, they share water, they send chemical signals between trees. Maple trees can, I don't know about warn, but basically they're signals that an insect attack is coming through these fungal threads. Is it science fiction? I don't think so, because it is soil ecology. There's protozoa, the single-cell grazers that eat bacteria and release nutrients, keeping the bacterial population balanced. We have that inside of ours too, right? We have good bacteria and bad bacteria, and we want to make sure that we encourage the good bacteria while keeping the bad bacteria at bay. Protozoa are out there grazing on this bacteria in the ground. And then there's nematodes, and these are going to be microscopic worms. Some are helpful, some are harmful, and the helpful ones prey on pests, help decompose organic material. And then we have earthworms, and these are the engineers of the underground. Charles Darwin wrote a whole entire book about them, calculating that a worm could move tons of soil per acre every year. Their tunneling aerates the soil. Their casings enrich the ground, and their movements mix up nutrients evenly throughout these layers. Well, maybe not they're not doing it on purpose, but it helps to make those nutrients more even throughout the layer. Then you have ants and beetles. These are going to be our little miners, carry organic material around underground, creating also those tubes. Those tubes allow that aeration, again, the nutrients to move and water to flow. Moles and voles and other types of ground nesting bees, they're going to create these structures, digging inside of the ground, rustling. You can see them. I went to my friend's house the other day, and she has bird feeders everywhere. And I walked across her front yard, and this was about 10 o'clock at night, and probably it sounded like dozens of voles just scattering in every direction. But they create these underground tunnels, and it adds soil fuel to this entire web, keeping nutrient cycling, pathogens in check, and keeping the ground itself healthy. People pay a lot of money and time to aerate their yards, but the aerations will happen naturally if you have a healthy backyard. You have earthworms, you have voles, you have all sorts of critters digging around back there. And when this web is healthy and the plants are resisting disease naturally and the water is moving smoothly through the ground and everything works perfectly. I think sometimes we tinker too much, but that's just kind of me, that we put in a lot of pesticides to keep the pesticides at bay, which kills the good and the bad. We put in various chemicals, which affects the bacterial nature, which I'm not saying yet you can't do any of those things, but there's a process in place. And so soil itself basically isn't just alive, it's organized. It has all these structures that are a part of it. And soil matters more than we think we do. Like I said, we get annoyed when we track it inside of our house, but it grows our food. Over 95% of our food starts in the soil. Wheat, vegetables, fruit, everything feeds, from that. The livestock that are in farms feeds from all of these plants. And so everything traces back to this living layer of ground. It's funny that someone gave this statistic of 95%. Boy, I'm trying to think about what that other 5% are that just grows in the air or something like that. It also cleans out the water. As rain passes through the soils and particles and microbes filter out the impurities of the area, it is also treating the water that goes through this particular kind of system. So soil also has a cleansing of the water, returning the water back into underground water stores, lakes, rivers, so that the whole process begins again. And the soil itself helps buffer against soil and droughts. This spongy, organic, rich soil soaks up excessive water during storms or after you get snow melt turning into water after a big winter. A healthy soil can help turn some of the floodwaters and some of the waters into trickles by managing some of the stress of the water by soaking it in. And the soil itself is just the largest living habitat on Earth. It is a home to a quarter of all known species on Earth. We need soil for our crops, for our water runoff, for our air to be purified by the plants around us. It makes oxygen with those plants, forest, trees, and it helps bring everything together in that source of that humble brown matrix that we call soil. And sometimes civilizations forget the importance of keeping a healthy soil together. Ancient Mesopotamians irrigated its field with salt water, and it built up in the soil. Eventually, the crops failed because they can't grow in salt water, and you have towns, villages, and cities that vanished. And one of the suspicions is it had to do with the fact that they lost their ability to grow crops right outside their city. In the American Dust Bowl, there's a whole lot that goes into it. But when you came across, the prairies of the grasslands of the United States and plowed up the grass and the natural plants that were growing there at the time, and then suddenly get hit with a very heavy, dry year so that they couldn't plant the new crops on this ground, suddenly you had the wind picking up and blowing soil hundreds of miles away. And then it caused this devastation. I mean, it just was one of those things that caused it to get worse and worse and worse with this combination of plowing up the grass, having an incredible drought, and having an incredible wind. And all the soil that was held in place by these plants that were there no longer available. And it was devastating. And even today, we figure we lose about 24 billion tons of fertile soil every year because of erosion, construction, neglect. And so it's something that we have to pay attention to. Obviously, our farmers need it. We need it, for our forests and our trees. Keeping a healthy ground is important, and it's important to our own existence. So some of the biggest threats when it comes to having a healthy soil is, first of all, erosion. That just means that you have exposed layers of soil, and the very top few inches of the soil are the richest part. And when rain, wind blows off the soil because it wasn't covered, it wasn't growing anything, the richest part of the soil is gone. I was seeing when it came to the Dust Bowl that some of the richest parts of the soil were found hundreds of miles away from where they were originally at, leaving the place that they left devastated. Then, you can have, like I said, runoff with a lot of fertilizers and pesticides that can kill kind of the natural organisms that were existing in the soil. So some things that we can do to make sure that our soil stays healthy and rich is we add compost to it, mulch to it. It returns nutrients and materials to it. As I mentioned in past podcasts, my town has banned many of the fertilizers you can use to grow better grass, to grow better gardens, but returning compost and fall leaves and mulching those fall leaves back in there can return these nutrients to it naturally without using the named fertilizer, although fertilizer is very important to feeding the world. So it's a mix and a balance of all of that. Doing these things can help feed the underground area. Compost is teeming with microbes, and that will help repopulate a poor soil, and it'll start to recover. Covering bare soil is important too, whether it's with grass or crops or leaf litter, even from the leaf litter itself, will help protect it. There was discussions about all these caterpillars right now. My friends and I are seeing a lot of woolly caterpillars, and they are going to overwinter in leaf piles. So when we find one sort of crossing in the middle of the sidewalk, we go throw it in our local leaf pile so it's protected for the winter. But a lot of the life that exists to survive over winter is going to be in the soil itself, under these grass covers, or underneath, like I said, leaf litter itself. And the other part is don't dig up, gardens or till areas until you're ready to grow something there. A lot of times people will grow big gardens, but they'll only fill part of it, and that soil will start to become damaged because nothing is growing in it. The gardens will allow for a structure of nutrients and preserving everything in it to help keep that soil pretty healthy. And then the other part of it is think about, not saying don't use chemicals, but think about balancing your chemicals and your fertilizers to protect microbial life. There's ways of using the right chemicals so that it basically doesn't just destroy the natural life that exists in the ground. And so there's a balance there for sure. Then the other part of it too is that you can introduce more earthworms. You can introduce more beneficial bugs to your backyard. I know some people go and buy them and put them into their backyard. Those earthworms are casting, which is, I think their poop, contains up to 5 times more nitrogen and 7 times more phosphorus than the surrounding soil. So it's good for them to have. So people can introduce more earthworms to their backyard. You can also choose to grow plants that are useful in channeling oxygen. They grow the right materials. They put the right materials back in the ground. We started learning, I don't know how long ago, that you rotate your crops. so that if you're starting to leach nitrogen out of the ground, then you grow a crop that puts nitrogen back into the ground naturally, and you have these cycles of beneficial nutrients being returned to the soil. We see that in farming, but it's something you can do in your backyard as well, is making sure that you're always growing something that leaves nutrients back into the ground and that you rotate it over time. I'm thinking about in my backyard of putting a small prairie back there. I have enough room in my backyard where I could put prairie plants, and that will give a lot of grassy material, which can go into a compost bin or just be mulched up into the yard. Like I said, I leave the leaves in my backyard in winter. And so all of that adds up to a very healthy soil, supports basically the life that goes in underneath it. So I hope that helps understand a little bit about soil. It's funny how interesting it is. Without it, we would just be a big rocky planet. We wouldn't have plants. We wouldn't have animals grazing on it. We wouldn't have us being able to grow crops and have food and feed this planet around us. And you can just imagine this thin, dark layer that clings to the rocks just a few inches in some places is where the forests rise, the food is grown, the rivers are filtered, and it is the life around us. This entire living world depends on this very thin layer of very dark, rich soil. We depend on it. It protects us, and hopefully we can protect it a little bit too. So the next time you go outside, just remember there's a whole universe out there underneath your ground. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any comments, I would love to hear from them. You can put them right here if you're watching this on video, or you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can even try to grab a jar full of soil and look to see what's in it, to kind of look at it under a microscope, try to grow some plants in it, and kind of enjoy it just outside your front door. Appreciate you being there. Thanks so much and have a great day.